Hey everyone, it's Alex Kahaya from the Index Podcast. I want to tell you about Mantis, a groundbreaking platform that's simplifying the way we interact across blockchains. If you're a developer or just into DeFi, you'll want to pay attention. Mantis enables trust-minimized transactions across different chains, letting you trade or execute actions seamlessly while getting the best possible outcome, all without the usual complexities. Imagine being able to move assets and settle transactions across blockchains easily with maximum value extraction, all while staying secure and decentralized. That is what Mantis is bringing to the table. Mantis is an official sponsor of the Index Podcast, and their founder, Omar, and I regularly host a new live stream series on X called Everything SVM. We have these live streams weekly, and if you want to keep up with what's happening in the Solana ecosystem, especially as it relates to the new innovative deployments of the Solana virtual machine, you should tune into this live stream. Check them out at mantis.app and follow them on X at Mantis, MANTIS. At the Index, we believe that people are worth knowing, and we thank Mantis for enabling us to tell the stories of the people who are building the future of the internet. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to the Index Podcast, hosted by Alex Kahaya. Plug in as we explore new frontiers with entrepreneurs, builders, and investors shaping the future of the internet.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Index. This week, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Stephen Waterhouse, founder and CEO of Nazare Ventures, which is an investment firm focused on early stage companies and AI infrastructure. And if you've been a listener of this show before, you've actually heard me talk about Dr. Stephen Waterhouse before, because he was the CEO of Orchid Labs when I was there. It's where I got my start in crypto. So super happy to have you here, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be on the show and great to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and really interested to talk more about Nazare and your new venture and kind of your thesis behind that. I know it focuses primarily on AI, it sounds like. But before we get into that, we were kind of chatting about this before the show. You don't really need to be doing another venture firm company. So I'm really curious to kind of dig into why you're doing this. Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning to keep hustling and build this firm?
Well, I mean, without getting too existential around the sort of the need to have things to do, I didn't mention earlier, but I recently had another kid, so I have a 6-month-old now.
What? Congratulations!
I have more things to do. I've got 3 now. That's the biggest project I have on my plate. But as you mentioned, I was involved with Orchid, founder and CEO, and then before that started Pantera Capital in 2013. So I was trying to remember how many startups I've actually done or kind of things I've gone from 0 to 1 with. It's around 10 or so now in a career of 30 years or so. And as you said, like why do another one? Why start a venture fund from scratch? Well, I learned a long time ago that I'm not very good at working for people. So that means I have to do my own thing. And then the question is, well, why do something? And the other thing I learned is that it's really fun to work on interesting things and to work with interesting people, and that is what gets me up in the morning. That sort of thrill of discovering new things. And I've done a lot of things where I've started things, taken them from 0 to 1, and that's what I hope to offer people when I work with them as an investor, is to help them, teach them things I know, work with them through the good times, through the bad times, and also have a seat on what's hopefully a rocket ship when we invest in it. As far as AI, I did my PhD in we didn't call it AI back then. It was just kind of machine learning and neural networks. I worked on recurrent neural networks and mixes of experts and applied it to speech recognition in the 90s at Cambridge. And then I worked with NASA for a few years when I moved out to the States in 97, but I mostly turned my back on AI as a category really when internet advertising started, because I felt like it was really about kind of monetizing people and mining humans, right? It was also like, how do you build a better advertising model? How do you, sure, you're personalizing, but really you're just kind of trying to monetize. And that was interesting in as much as it was making money is interesting, but it wasn't the thing that had got me super excited about AI. And then that came back later. So the last couple of years, when I've seen the growth of agents and things that are really empowering people, I mean, apart from the fact that it's just crazy and science fiction, like, we maybe build an AGI, like it's wild. there are like real practical applications of these things. It's growing faster than anything ever has. And so it's just hard to ignore. So I didn't ignore it. I got into it.
There's a couple stories I tell about you when we first started at Orchid. And one of them is the first thing that you told me to do, and I benefited from this massively, was you were like, go literally like first day on the job. I had just been hired, but really this was kind of a test. I always felt like you asked me to look at the top 50 tokens by market cap. And you weren't even like specific about the deliverable. You were just like, go figure it out, like research it. And I came back to you like 48 hours later with like a 50-page report on it. And you were like blown away at how much I produced as far as what the research was. I learned so much from digging into the space in that way. Like I went to every single website. I read all their white papers. I did like background research on the founders. Like I went really deep. Literally within like a week, I was like, oh, these are the themes of crypto. These are like zero knowledge, like ZKP. This is an area of research. There's different cryptography topics like scalability. Back this is like 2016, 2017, right? So you remember what like all the different narratives were back then. And I was thinking about that this morning because I actually had to do that work. Like I actually did the work and read everything, but now I could just drop links into ChatGPT and be like, build me a report. And it would just do it, immediately. So it gives you superpowers.
Yeah, it gives you superpowers. And I had a similar thing the other day. I wanted it to extract, I was trying to figure out how to extract emails from a folder in Gmail. It was like, give me everyone I've sent emails to. And there used to be tools to do this, but then I realized that these tools just really weren't getting updated and developed anymore, because after I sat down and figured like, why is this so hard to do? I realized, well, I'll just ask ChatGPT to do it. And it did it. There's always this theory of how do you train a great lawyer? Well, you make them do the grunt work for 5-10 years, and then after the end of that, they're a great lawyer, or a great research analyst, or a great financial analyst, or even a great trader. And we are somehow losing that skill set. I don't know. I think time will tell as to whether or not there's something lost there. There's some kind of inherent skill that you need and some instinct that you have, or whether we will, as you say, just kind of get superpowers and there'll be something that like it's kind of irrelevant. Like who cares if you don't know how to do X or Y? It's just something you do.
Yeah. Like I can't do spreadsheets. I suck at like Excel. If you ask me to sit down and like build a financial model, I literally could not do it, which sounds funny because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a CEO now, but it's not my strength. I needed to make a model the other day and I had no one to help me with it for some reason. Like people were just too busy and I just needed to get it done. And I literally like used ChatGPT to write a Python script for me. And I know how to use command line, and it debugged the whole thing for me. It took me about 20 minutes and I had a bunch of errors and stuff. And then all of a sudden I had a spreadsheet on my desktop that the script just made. I think everybody can agree that the pace of innovation is kind of crazy and it's really hard to keep up with. And I'm kind of curious what your thesis is. You primarily do seed, right? Through Nazare. So you're like looking at earliest stage ideas. What are you looking for? What's the areas of innovation that you like, tip of the spear, really exciting things that you think are going to have like outsized outcomes?
It's a bit counterintuitive, I guess, or a bit contradictory in some ways. I'm looking at not AI applications. So everything that's not an AI application. So it's basically infrastructure. In crypto, people are saying no more infrastructure, but in AI, I'm saying, actually, I think we need to take a look at the infrastructure aspect. And I'm also not doing hardware. So it's kind of like everything in me, the squishy software stuff in between. So that includes things like I'm looking at fundamental model algorithms. So I'm looking at alternative to the current LLM stack. I'm looking at how to scale existing systems. And so that brings into things like, well, trying to find faster ways to train, more flexible ways to train, more flexible ways to execute. We're looking at decentralized architectures, which is kind of where the crypto tie-in comes in. Incentivize decentralized systems, whether it's inference or the new work that's happening in training, which is fascinating. I'm happy to chat more about that. Decentralized agents fills into this idea or just cooperative agents, small agents. The idea that a collection of lots of smaller agents would be more efficient and perhaps more cost effective than one large monolithic agent. Edge computing is part of this framework. There's a lot of different things in it. It's really like, I sometimes call it matcha. It's like make AI cheap again. So it's like a lot of my contemporaries in funds which are looking more at a sort of more crypto AI, or even founders, you hear them talk about, the first thing they say is big AI is bad, therefore let's democratize it. And I spent so long on crypto now at this point that I can't invest on a thesis which is like X is bad, therefore do Y, because no one cares. What matters is, do these things make more money? Do they save more money? They're more efficient? Do they do something that you couldn't have done before otherwise? And I think, we're all maturing in this kind of crypto ecosystem to realize that you can't just trade on narratives. Well, we can, it's called meme coins, but you can't just like go trade on and invest on narratives. You have to have a more fundamental thought process. So that's been the idea. So far, we did a first close and we've started to invest in a few companies. They're scattered around the globe. We have one in LA, we have one in Zurich, we have one in Miami. I'm increasingly spending more time on the West Coast because it's the sort of mecca of AI at this point again, or like it's a mecca or something again. San Francisco's back one more time. But there's a lot of stuff happening online. I'm plugged into Discord servers all day and live on Twitter, etc.
I really see your thesis and vision here too. And it's the thing that I've been most interested in. The comment I think you make about the benefits, the core value prop, is really accurate. I think that there are going to be some that happen to be better than the centralized systems, but like that's a side effect of a better product that happens to be like DePIN type things, right? Like the go to market for the GPUs plays into some kind of token economic thing for DePIN. I think it's got to come down to being better, faster, cheaper, and stronger. I do think, though, that there is a real reason why you need token economics to achieve that, right? So if you look at like Elon Musk, he builds in 19 days 100,000 GPU cluster in a data center. Nobody can do that, right? Like how's you're a 2-person dev team going to get that kind of compute power at any reasonable price? It's not impossible. They probably won't get that kind of compute power using like some kind of DePIN network, but they could get pretty close. They could get something that's pretty powerful to get them off the ground, and that could be valuable. I also really like the idea that like token economic powered AI LLMs can power open source LLMs that then like the world can own, and that doesn't get centralized into Facebook, Google, X. From a narrative standpoint, I do think there is an existential risk there.
I agree. And the last 7 years of Orchid, I'm not contradicting all the talks I gave and the narrative around that. I completely agree. The thing I've come to realize is that I think those things should be the punchline, not the driving force. Meaning, if we have open source AI, if we have decentralized training systems, for example, let's just take training for a minute, because you started mentioning at the beginning, then it will fundamentally end up democratized. Because if it's open and it's easy for people to use and get access to these things, and as you say, like the decentralized architectures, whether they are token incentivized or not, like the token incentivized just gets them like up there faster and creates a better economic model for it. And it's kind of hard to pay thousands of people over Stripe. Not impossible, but it's hard to sign them up and so on. But you just kind of wallet and say, okay, everything works. It's kind of easier. Like the financial systems are easier. And then there's some benefit to getting into it, and then there's some benefit to staking it, et cetera. We understand how these things work. But really fundamentally, it's about the open source aspect of it and the fact that currently there's been such a incredible lock-in by NVIDIA. And that's really what we should focus on. The InfiniBand component for these systems, the networking stack and the software networking stack is all so intertwined that the thing it resembles to me the most is when I was working at Sun Microsystems in the early 2000s, when Sun was in that transition point, which it didn't really achieve, which was trying to go from this very sort of like proprietary stack of chips, operating systems, applications, and hardware, right? Because they ran the internet. Those systems were the things that ran all the .com servers. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And all of a sudden it was a collection of thousands of basically PC-grade servers connected over gigabit Ethernet. And that idea that would happen all of a sudden was unthinkable during the dot-com boom. It was like, that's just never going to happen. But there were these people murmuring around and people writing sort of articles about like how you could do this thing with these open source tools. And I think something similar will happen in the AI space. And that's one of the things we're really focused on.
Interesting. Have you heard of Bagel?
Yeah, I know Bagel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an advisor to them and been working with them pretty closely, and they're raising another round, so we can talk about that. It might be too later stage for you. I don't know if you do like Series A or not, but they're really interesting. And just by way of example to talk about some of the stuff we're talking about here, they have a way to train both open source or proprietary models with data that can be protected, like the source of the data using FHE. That's like their primary thing. The other piece that they do is around the economics, right? For especially as it relates to open source LLMs. So I didn't realize what parameters were. I didn't like really understand this stuff, and I kind of learned by talking to Bidhan about it. But basically, you can have a proprietary set of parameters that kind of defines how the model behaves when you feed it data. And if I want to append that parameter, that behavior, or change it, I can then attach my own parameters to the same model and like modify them. This is how Bagel works, right? And then if someone goes and uses my version of that model with my parameters, they pay me, but they also get the other guy who started the model and made the original parameters that gave it whatever behavior that it has also gets paid. And so it's a way to like compensate people for contributing to and improving the various use cases around this. And I think that kind of innovation is like really, really interesting. It took a long time for me to wrap my head around that because I just didn't understand the basic concepts.
You're talking about fine-tuning the weights, right?
Yes.
So you kind of,
yeah, exactly. And that's just not something that's possible in current systems, right? Like they don't do that. They don't build because the incentives aren't there.
I like what those guys are doing. The big challenge with so-called crypto AI systems right now, and I speak as an investor in a few of them, is the big challenge is like there's quite a impedance mismatch between the crypto world and the AI world, in the sense that most people in AI think we're crazy, right? And they see crypto as mostly just a friction to getting people to use systems. That's largely because I think AI came up during a time where we were dealt ourselves some of our worst body blows. So if you think like the period of time where the generative AI systems were kicking in, like Stability AI was coming online and ChatGPT earlier versions was just in the wake of FTX. And there were people exiting crypto to go work on AI startups and just being like, I'm done, I'm out, right? I wouldn't have been in this industry, in the crypto industry for 11 years if it had all just been scam artists. I mean, it's like any bleeding edge technology or industry is going to have, especially when you add money to it, is going to have the fair share of odd characters and scam artists, etc. But I've always been fascinated by the technology and by the especially the people, some of the smartest people I know have been working on this. This kind of idea that we can fuse these worlds together has to be approached carefully. And I think one idea is, in a similar way to kind of Aave and Uniswap and other people, Compound, etc., like built out Curve, built out DeFi as this really self-contained system that's now starting to build bridges to the existing financial world. You've got real-world assets bridging over with Aave. You've got components of Uniswap being cited in JP Morgan papers. Maybe crypto AI needs to build something like DeFi, as like a self-contained system that people build models from, people build applications from, that has its own kind of economics, its own kind of system, before we get too excited about trying to go fix big AI, because big AI doesn't care. They're going to do their thing and people are going to be fine, make lots of money and do their, et cetera, et cetera. I'll give you another weird idea, though. The other area I think that maybe let's not call it crypto AI, but kind of decentralized AI may come in. You and I did a lot of work on this in the Orchid days, but one of the real powers of decentralization is to route around systems of control. So it's this idea of disintermediating existing things. And some of the existing things may be like, okay, I want to do uncensored stuff. So now we have like Venice AI, we have a bunch of the guys at Noose Research building uncensored language models or unbiased language models. And so that's one aspect where you can imagine like a decentralized architecture is beneficial. Like you want to do stuff that is just not allowed to do in your country or some other reason. Similar idea for Orchid. But then another reason is regulatory arbitrage, is the idea of like, well, hang on a second, I'm just not allowed to do this. Like, why can't I do what I want to do? Now, the EU Act, and I live in Portugal now, so I'm quite familiar with some of these rules. The EU AI Act, which is the European Union's AI bill, it defines all generative AI startups or companies as high risk. If you're a high risk company, there is a stack of documents that you have to adhere to, including having a compliance officer, a manual, a this, a that. You can imagine, like, think crypto regulations, but gone crazy, right? So one of my predictions is that all these AI companies look a lot like crypto companies in a few years. They've got domicile in Switzerland. They're trying to do open source. They're doing decentralized architectures because otherwise they actually can't play, especially in Europe. The California bill is a bit better, but the regulators are having a field day in this space and applying a lot of misunderstanding and poor knowledge to an area that is so powerful and has so much capability and so much possibility to improve economies for countries, and yet they are running scared.
Well, it's interesting impact from a go-to-market standpoint, but I want to go back to your previous comment about like the DeFi of AI. I actually have thought about this too, and I'm curious if you have any like specific examples of what that might look like. But in my head, it's like the crypto native or degen, use case that can still get pretty big market caps because of the flow of capital. And I just need to understand what are some ideas.
Well, so BitTensor, which is one of the first ones to really come down this from a sort of fair launch model, and Morpheus is another one. I think there's some glimpses of what might be there. And now with some of these like weird little kind of crypto agents plugged into Twitter, these kinds of weird little stacks that people are, there's a bunch of them running around on Solana and Base and other places. And they're like kind of autonomous, they're kind of not autonomous. There's people pulling the strings, but that's fine. Like they're almost like glimpses into a weird future. I think more interestingly, it's not that it's not interesting. So there could be interesting. So this one guy is this guy called Plinius the Exploiter, I think his name is. He's on Twitter. He just raised some money from launching what looks like a meme coin. He's been publishing exploits on Twitter of all the different models. So he shows you how to jailbreak the AI, which is kind of like you give it a particular prompt and it kind of goes into like uncensored mode, or you manage to go around it. And then meanwhile the AI developers, try and fix it and get better, and so it's all this funny game of almost like Cydia, like Jay used to build. He has now raised money to build a project to continue to do work in this space, and it's going to be somehow tied into the token economics of this meme coin. That really got me thinking about, well, this is real, and this guy wasn't a crypto guy. He just did it because he's like, I don't know how to raise money for this from VCs. I'm basically going to go out and essentially do like a little sort of ICO for my idea. I could see more things like that, more situations where you have independent researchers that want to figure out some way to fund their idea or fund their project, and then do it through these crypto economic mechanisms, especially if there is lots of regulation, or especially if there's a misuse around, maybe it's hard to get funding for things in the future, maybe people want to experiment research. But I think the real power will come when we have a stack built around these decentralized AI sets of tools that allows people to build applications easily and quickly. Now, they may not be as good. The language models may not be as powerful. They may not be as fully fledged. Maybe it doesn't have reasoning yet, or maybe it does soon. But I think that will build a smaller but increasingly powerful ecosystem, which perhaps unlike DeFi and kind of like there's a common criticism of crypto, which is that it's just this sort of self-referential thing. It's like DeFi just serves the people, like the same people who go to DEF CON and Breakpoint, right? It's just they're all hanging out in the same gang. But I think that if we can start getting applications built in AI from these decentralized stacks that actually start reaching a lot of people, because it's AI and people love this stuff and they want to use it and want to use access and so on. The challenge is finding things that aren't just copies of existing things, because you have to do something new. You have to do something more powerful, more interesting. Maybe it ties in prediction markets. Maybe it does things that only crypto things do well. I think the success of the prediction markets during the election was fascinating. That there's like some drama and some scam and all these things associated with it, but that's like probably one of the most successful applications outside of trading that we've seen. I guess NFTs too, but this was just like, are you kidding? This is front page every day.
Well, I think it's really different than NFTs though, because NFTs is kind of, for me still, and as somebody who built a company in the NFT space, I'm still kind of skeptical of like what their long-term value is to the world. Like, where's the value prop versus like Polymarket? Man, that's very clear, like extremely clear that they predicted the election. And this is one of the interesting things about Solana too. And I know Polymarket's not on Solana, but one of Tolly's things is like the information crossing the planet at the speed of light that's financialized. The news getting from one end of the planet to the other end in like 400 milliseconds. It's tied to money. That's what Polymarket is. That's what a prediction market is. And I think you're right. There's got to be some kind of application. My theory is that one of these things like Bagel or these like different like ways for training and making an AI more powerful with token economics tied around that whole process will be a layer that an application gets built on. And when one of these layers gets an application on it, then it's going to be like a big boom for some kind of crypto native use case, right? And there'll be like an economy built around this very strong open source LLM or pieces of different, models, whatever it might be. But then the end use case, the pump.fun or the Polymarket of AI in the Web3, like it's hard to predict. But I think this thing about like what you were talking about, that guy that raised money for his research is like, it's those things as a seed investor, you're going to like, if you feel like you're like kind of looking at it sideways, trying to figure out what it is, it's probably something to pay attention to, right? Like, especially in a space like this,
What's weird is that I was tracking this guy on a non-crypto level. I'm just following his work. So I was like, this is amazing. He's just publishing exploits all the time. And then at some point a couple months ago, Mark Andreessen sent him some money. In the same way that Mark Andreessen sent the Truth Terminal some money. Because he was just saying, hey, I want some help. I need to fund some of my work and so on. And Mark's just like, yeah, here's a couple of Bitcoin. Go do it. Go have fun. That's when I should have found the guy and invested.
That was it. Missed it. But that happens. But a lot of this is pattern recognition, right? That's what I've learned as an investor and entrepreneur. You start doing the reps, and this is a new frontier space. And so you got to build the reps still, right? Even as somebody who's been in the space for as long as you have as an investor, it takes a unique perspective in every market. And sometimes you got to look at a lot of opportunities to start seeing it. And then the next time you'll get that itch, you'll start that little voice in the back of your head be like, this smells like the last one we saw. And then you just deploy some capital.
I think that the thing that I got on that pattern recognition also experience is, it's paradoxically, right, is that I feel like the more investments I do, the more stuff I do, and the more I explore this space in particular, the more kind of, I guess, like the more kind of humble I find myself trying to be, or if I find myself forced to be. There's like such an incredible amount to learn, and yes, you offer things and you offer experience and so on, but I know I try and approach it like almost like the first time. I'm like, okay, let me try and understand this completely and really like dig in and really explore each thing carefully, rather than just kind of assume I know something. Because you gotta keep discovering.
We have like only a couple of minutes left, and I always ask the same question. But what have I not asked you that I should have asked?
Well, we had the election already, right? So that was easy.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, we did that. No, I was just saying, like, if this was pre-election, we could have played that game. I don't know where the bull market's going. We talked about that before the call, so I can't really tell you where that's going. I think they're all very unique. I think the dynamics of this space has changed in crypto quite significantly. You could ask me about superintelligence and AGIs. That'd be kind of a fun conversation.
Explain what that is, and then tell me if we're all going to die because of Terminator-esque Skynet.
Yeah. So the idea of AGI, or artificial superintelligence, is the idea that you get to this point where the systems that we're building start to self-improve, and then they kind of take off and sort of accelerate past us. And there's various subcamps within the AI world which talk about either acceleration or deceleration, and we should slow things down. And there was a recent last year, I think there was a petition signed by a lot of researchers, and actually also Elon Musk and other people, saying, let's slow down the pace of innovation, let's slow down things. And there's other people who say, no, let's just accelerate as fast as you can and just get to this thing. It doesn't matter. We're going to figure it out. Everything's going to be fine. YOLO, right? And then this is a lot where you see these regulatory bodies coming in and trying to understand what's going on, but listening to what should be like very smart people like Sam Altman saying, yeah, you should actually be careful because this stuff's really powerful and we don't quite know what you could do with it or what might happen with it. And so the usual question is like, when's the AGI coming? So there's the guys at OpenAI believe there are, I think, 5 steps, and we're 2 steps along the way. And the next step is reasoning and planning, which they are working on now. There's preview releases of the new O1 models. Turns out the way you get reasoning and planning is you make the AI, you make the network think for longer. When you let it think for longer, it does better on reasoning and planning. If it just answers too quickly, it tends to make mistakes on these more complex problems. And then you get into all sorts of weird ideas of philosophy and like, what does it mean if you have something super intelligence? Is it conscious? Is it something we should be concerned about? What are its goals? Like, does it have goals? Does it just do what you tell it to? Like, is it automatically going to follow some science fiction dystopian narrative where it's going to turn around, like you said, like try and kill us? So where I land on this is as follows. I think that attempts to try and slow things down are fundamentally flawed. And at the same time, regions of the world will slow things down, and they'll slow things down for different reasons. I have this funny example. When I moved to Portugal, which has a different development pace to lots of places in the world for other reasons, but one of the things that happened is I said, hey, I want to rent a garage space for my car. And they're like, okay, cool. I was like, okay, here's my credit card. They're like, oh, no, that's not how it works here. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, in San Francisco, I just give them my credit card. I sign a contract. Bye-bye. Never talk to you again. Like, just, until I quit the garage and then I cancel it, right? Something goes wrong, I call the credit card company and they deal with it. But in Portugal, they send me an invoice, and then the invoice has an IBAN on it. I send them the money. The bank sends the proof to me, which I have to then send to the bank, to the guy who asked for it, and so on and so on and so forth. So I'm busy, so I have an assistant. So my assistant does it. So my assistant then works the bank.
Yeah, I was going to say, sounds like something for someone else to do.
And there's this chain of people in the way. And when I complained about this initially, I said, this is ridiculous. What are you guys doing? They're like, oh, well, if we automated this, what would all the people do? And so that attitude of like, what would all the people do will, I think, be a point where many jurisdictions in the world will just say, no, this is too fast. We're going to slow this down. You can't use AI here. You can't automate that much. So we'll naturally slow things down. But also the thing that's found is that trying to give AI systems constraints when you train them turns out to actually have like weird effects. And so we saw this situation with Google Gemini where they try to add in, I think they weren't trying to like, have people from the, sort of Philippines look like founding fathers. I think they were really like trying to make it biased in a way that would like more accurately reflect a section of society. But the problem is that when you train systems with these biases and these rules built in, it turns out you get worse results in general, like overall worse results. And the system learns things that you don't want it to. So I think fundamentally it's flawed. I don't think the AIs are going to turn around and kill us overall. And I think it implies a hubris in our understanding of intelligence, which I don't think we understand yet. So assuming that just because we don't understand something is going to go kill us is like, seems a bit weird. So that's where I'm landing on it. Fingers crossed, hope for the best.
Space Odyssey 2001 has been playing on repeat in my head this whole time you've been talking, and it's like the red dot. It's like, I'm sorry, Dr. Waterhouse. I can't do that. Yeah,
true.
One of the interesting things about this, in my mind, is that some regions will run at the wall to accelerate this. And the real risk there is that the power they get from that, the upside for them way outweighs their risk or the planet's risk. And they will end up with unimaginable power. And the conspiracy theorist in me thinks that there already is AGI. Like there's some very wealthy individuals or countries that already have access to it, and what does that mean, for the rest of the world?
I don't think so yet, because assuming it's based on the same stack of technology that we've built so far, you'd notice if a cluster that big had been built. And I don't think anyone's got the GPU chips that NVIDIA has by their own means. So NVIDIA would know, if you know what I mean? So like, I don't know, maybe.
It's Manhattan Project like race. It's the same power as nuclear weapons. It's that big. But
also the same power as nuclear fusion, in the sense that it could actually transform the planet
100%.
in a very positive way. Yeah.
100%. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been good to connect and was super interesting conversation.
Thank you.
You just listened to the Index Podcast with your host, Alex Kahaya. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.